Hello and welcome to Samsung. In the previous video, we went ahead and took care of the basic configuration as when it comes to the network piece. So we finished off all the pieces, and got the controller up and running. We took care of the network element of it. We had the interfaces configured. We had the VLANs configured. In this video, we are going to get down and actually start configuring the SSIDs. I'm going to go through the concept of how do you actually map an SSID to a VLAN. We are going to talk about the parameters that are required to actually configure the SSID. And then we will have a device connect to the access point, and we will have, by the end of the day, once the connection is done, uh, we will move on to the next topic. So let's go ahead and start. So before I start, let's go ahead and recall, right? This was our sample network. We had the access point talking to the controller by the end of last video. I had the trunk ports towards the network with the VLANs 10, which was dedicated to the AP management, VLAN 20, which is the corporate SSID, and VLAN 30, which is the guest SSID. So on the controller side, we made sure that two things that we learned was we made sure that the AP management address has to be configured. You have to pick the AP management address and apply that configuration right here. Then you have to configure all the interfaces. So you go ahead and configure all the VLANs right from here, and then you go ahead and apply that configuration to the global configuration to the DHCP. So that's how the VLANs are configured. And then we also talked about how the DHCP is configured. The DHCP, you have to make sure that the proxy server is configured as the DHCP proxy mode is set to proxy. Primary server is set to 1.1.1.1. Then you come in here and configure the AP management pool, and it could be a user data pool as well. So the DHCP configuration goes here. So all right. So before we start talking about configuring the SSIDs, we have to understand the concept of interface groups. And this all goes back to tying an SSID to a VLAN. So interface group is where you select. We created VLAN 20 and VLAN 30. Now to tie VLAN 20 to the corporate SSID, I have to create an interface group and then go to the WLAN and tie it there. But if I give you an example, I could have multiple VLANs part of the interface group, and then they in turn be associated to a single SSID. So let's take an example of an enterprise. Enterprises don't want to see a lot of SSIDs out there. They want to keep one corporate SSID, and they want to assign users to a VLAN based on their AD credentials. Now, if you want to do that, you are not going to have one big VLAN pool. Uh, you're going to have multiple VLAN pools, and so what you do is you create an interface group and add those VLANs into that group, and then based on how a user is authenticated, the controller assigns them to that VLAN. So I may have an employee who is in accounting, and I want to assign him to VLAN 10, and he connects to the same SSID as an employee in an R&D area where I want to give them more access, and so I want to make him part of VLAN 20. So so it's basically tying these two networks together in the same SSID. That's what interface groups does. So for our purposes, I'm going to keep it simple. So we have two VLANs, VLAN 20, and if I look at my notes here, SSID to VLAN mapping. The corporate SSID is VLAN 30. The guest SSID is VLAN 20. So VLAN 20 ties into the guest SSID. So let's go ahead and create an interface group first. So before you create a WLAN, you have to create a interface group if that SSID tunnels back to the controller. If it's a locally switched, then we have to follow a different procedure to assign VLAN to that SSID. So let's go ahead and name guest, guest, apply that. Once you've applied here, so we're going to select VLAN 20 from here. Successfully created. Okay. Back. And then I'm going to add one more here, which is name is corporate. Apply. And then that's part of VLAN 30. A lot of competitors, they also have a similar kind of configuration, and they call it like VLAN pooling. So you might hear things like VLAN pooling or things like that. So it's the same concept. At the end of the day, the idea is to tie the SSID to the VLAN. That's all there is to it. So now that we've configured the interface group, let's move on to the WLAN configuration. So I'm going to create an SSID. So I'm going to come under configuration, WLAN, add. The profile name is SSID corporate. Interface group is corporate, and capback tunnel mode is tunnel. So I'm going to actually have the user traffic come to the AP, and then the AP tunnels that back to the controller where it's going to be handled. And then the other capback tunnel mode is local bridging. When this is selected, you actually don't need an interface group. So you can see that the interface groups goes away, because in that case, when the user traffic comes to the AP just layer 2 switches the traffic locally. So it doesn't go all the way up to the controller. It's just like it just layer 2 switches onto the switch, and then the switch handles it into the network. Once that is done, you select the radio area. So whether it's a 2.4 or 5, by default we have 5 gigahertz. So you may want to select this 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, and then you apply. Alright, so the corporate SSID is created. You can see that admin status is disabled, so we have to come in and enable it. But before we do that, there are more parameters to be configured. So let's go into security. In the security, I'm going to create a password base, so WPA, WPA2. You don't want to enable this, you can just keep it like this. Let it be at the default settings for the security. So WPA2 is the highest form of, like, it's a good security mechanism there. So you want to do that CCMP or AES. That's again very strong security mechanism. And we're going to say the passwords. The password here. All these are additional parameters. If you are familiar with those, you may want to enable them or disable them. Or for the most part, I just keep it disabled. Okay, that's it. That is done. Now on the again on the SSID side, also I have the capability to make sure that I select certain data rates, whether I want to disable or enable these data rates. And when we'll talk about this in detail when we discuss radios in a separate nugget. Same thing goes on the 2.4 side as well. The next thing you want to do is look at the advanced settings. So here is where you're going to decide how the station gets the IP address. So there are two ways. A, the station can get the IP address from the controller if it is tunneling back. Keep in mind that if this is a locally bridged SSID, then in that case the traffic doesn't come back to the controller. So the user data immediately after the authentication goes back to the switch, and then it gets the IP address from the network. But if you're tunneling back to the controller, then either the controller assigns the IP address or it proxies the request to an in-house DHCP server. which is what we are going to do. So in our case, I'm going to say that the DHCP is override is enabled, and the address that I'm going to send. So this one is the corporate SSID, which is VLAN 30. So I'm going to send the request to 10.10.30.1, which is the firewall, and that's the one that's going to assign the IP address to the users. So 10.10.30.1 apply at setup 3. Okay. Okay, so a little note here. So ACL rule. So this is where you are going to, again, when there's a separate video dedicated to security, and we'll talk about it. But ACL rule in at a high level will allow us to, put restrictions on this SSID where we can say, the users are not allowed to go to a certain website, or you want to only restrict them to, certain websites, or not, within the network. You don't want them to be going in and this particular VLAN to go in and talk to certain IP addresses, or certain VLANs or whatnot. So that's the ACL rule, and then the application profile is deep packet inspection. It's related to providing quality of service to applications like YouTube or social media and things like that. So WMM, you're going to keep it enabled. User QoS, once we talk about QoS, wireless QoS, you'll know more about it. But in essence, you can restrict, per station uplink and downlink quality of service values, and you can say you can rate limit them to, like 1 megabit uplink, 2 megabit downlink, or whatever, however you would like to configure it. Station idle timeout is a value which is set to 300 seconds. This is where you kick out a station if it's idle for more than 5 minutes. So this is something that it's configurable. A lot of people I know in hospitality, people like to configure this quite a bit, but it's a pretty good feature to have, and you should keep that enabled. We move on to band steering. The band steering is where you always want to select 5 gigahertz preferred. The reason being that band steering is a feature where there are stations out there which support both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz radio. So by the process of band steering, we are able to figure out that if a station which is capable of doing 5 gigahertz tries to connect to us on 2.4 gigahertz, we will basically force it to connect on 5 gigahertz. That way, we are offloading the traffic from 2.4 gigahertz band, which is not a good band to be in, because it's overcrowded for the most part. 5 gigahertz is a much cleaner band. It gives us much more flexibility to configure a lot more channels. So it is a good idea to keep this enabled, 5 gigahertz preferred. Load balancing, there is a separate video just dedicated to how APs do load balancing, so I'm not going to talk about it here. The threshold value is 127 per radio, so that's 127 stations per radio. But in actuality, when you start talking about a hybrid kind of environment, this number is, it's just a number. At the end of the day, you have to look at, when you're planning for capacity, there's a lot more factors that go into place based on what kind of devices are brought into the network, how many streams they can do, what kind of application they are trying to process, or what kind of applications they are trying to access, what is the data rates associated with that, and there's quite a lot more engineering that goes into determining how many stations actually get good performance on the AP. I mean, at how many stations we get good performance. Multicast to unicast. Again, multicast to unicast is an option which works in conjunction with IGMP snooping. This is related to multicast applications. Content again. When we talk about multicasting, we'll go into details with that. But for the most part, you may want to keep it disabled for now. Again, broadcast and multicast forwarding, you want to keep it disabled for the most part. But again, depending upon the kind of environment that you are in. If there's a lot of streaming applications going on in your network, then you may have to keep them enabled. But it's a very important feature. Keep it disabled by default because it all relates to the performance of the network. So Uh, everything else you don't want to literally change. Just keep it as it is. MDNS snooping profile is associated with things like on-your gateway service, and we'll talk about it. In the next few videos here. Rate limitation is where you come in and you can say that on my SSID, I want to restrict the bandwidth to 10 megabits per second. I don't want to go above 10 megabits for upstream traffic and or 20 megabits for downstream traffic. It's basically upstream is towards the network, downstream is towards the access point. So that being said, we have all that configured here. And we're going to go ahead and every feature where you say apply, you have to apply it right there. You cannot you cannot just hit one apply so every set of feature set you have to come in and apply right here. Wherever it says apply. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, so go back and now I'm going to make sure. Let me just make sure that my access point is up. Yep, it is up. So I am going to go ahead and enable my SSID. Okay, password correctly here. There you go. So this is enabled. So now we should see the access point starting to broadcast that SSID. So let me see here. Corporate. Do we see it here? Okay, here you go. So the corporate SSID is right here. Connecting to it. It's asking me for the password. I had to pause the video because I realized that my firewall was not configured properly. So now I have the firewall configured. So I'm going to go ahead and enter the password here. And let's see if we get anything here. Okay, so it did not connect for some reason. Let's see. Oh, looks like my configuration was not correctly done. I apologize for that. Uh, for some reason, it didn't save my config properly. So interface group was this is not a CAPA tunnel. This is sorry, this is not locally bridge. It's supposed to be 802.3 tunnel, and this is corporate. Apply. Let's do this here. Let me just make sure that I have the DHCP relay configured properly. Alright, so it seems like that was the problem and now I am connected. So let me make sure that I got the right address here. Status details. Alright, so I got the address 10.10.30.3 and the default gateway is 10.10.30.1 and these are the DNS servers that I used. So it seems like our configuration did work and the device actually got an IP address from the firewall. So we can verify that the station is connected by coming here into monitor station, and you can see that this is the MAC address of the station, this is the IP address that got assigned, and the corporate SSID that it got assigned into. And let's look at the AP. So if you have the AP here, it should now say that there is one station associated with it. So all right, so that's all that I wanted to talk about in this video. We have configured the SSID and we have a station configured. So in the next video, we will look at much more advanced topics. We will talk about AP groups and we will talk about the radio settings that need to happen. more about how to optimize on what we have right now. So keep watching. Thank you so much.